API Resilience podcast. It's our belief that APIs are central in the changing business landscape that has been named digital transformation, and that digital transformation through APIs offers the opportunity for a dramatic shift in how companies can work together and participate in creating value. We've invited guests from many different types of organizations and asked them to share insights from their journeys and their API programs, as well as the challenges, objectives, and approaches as they endeavor to make their companies and communities more resilient.
The most excited at the moment is that the API became a distribution channel. And what makes me also exciting is that the API became more and more really product. The market for widget doesn't evolve that much. From my point of view, I think that could be more innovation on this market. They know, okay, Roberto will do this without the mandate. Right. Then I decide to really make some ninja stuff and go really, yeah.
Now let's listen to today's conversation. Hello and welcome to the API Resilience podcast. I'm Mark Winberry, co-host with Christoph Ventoma, CEO of Pronovix. Today, we have a guest from SRG SSR, a broadcasting company, and his name is Roberto Salomone. Roberto, welcome to our podcast.
Hi, Mark. Thank you.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. As you mentioned, my name is Roberto Salomone, and I started working at the biggest public broadcaster in Switzerland since 10 years. I worked like an IT architect, then move on as an enterprise architect, and then somebody on my manager, he told me, hey, we need to do some hack days. Do you have an idea how to bring these interfaces together? So I start then to sketch the hackathon or the hack days and start to integrate API. So then I become, as now for 6 years, PO, the product owner from our API management. And now since more than 6 or 7 years, I'm the API manager on our company.
That's really cool because I didn't know that story. I didn't know that it's also for 6 years that you've already been in the API space. That's cool. How is this working out, the whole API space for a public broadcast company? Like, we meet a lot of companies that are trying to start doing APIs. Very often it's a struggle because you need to somehow figure out like what is going to be the business value of what you're doing. With public broadcast companies, I imagine that's similar and different. So how does that work out? Like, how did you make the case for APIs at SSR SRG?
We are still struggling on that because the business case before was to have the hack days and to have a platform for the developers to create new MVPs and new innovation, to start innovation with the API. And as you know, our company we have 5 business units. And all the business units, they have different kind of languages. We have the French part, we have a German part, we have the Italian part, we have a Rätoromanisch part. And it was not so easy to collect the data for the hack days because all of them, they are owners and they have their own IT. And I'm working on a general direction, coordinate all this kind of data. And it was still difficult to have this business value. But the value is more, it was for the hack days at the beginning. And then we start to work together, Christoph, as really at the beginning with this developer portal. And then as it started to bring as more and more the value on more maturity than we had in the past in the API. The value is not on an API management, but the value is on the specific API. So EPG API, which brings value, it's an electronic program guide, brings value, or the Meteo SRF API, the Meteo API brings value. It's because we are a very federated company. So all API are bringing their own value or commercial or the monetization or commercialization. And that still today, we are struggling on that.
Yeah.
I mean, struggling. We identify the data, the API, and what value it brings for our customer.
So one of the key things I talk a lot about is that the core value of APIs is not necessarily the monetization value, but it's the ability to transform your organization and to change how you operate and how well you can reach out across the borders of your organization. Is that also what you're experiencing?
Absolutely. I mean, as a public broadcaster, it's not the first thing to make money with API, right? Yeah. So our value is to inform our customer, la raison d'être, the reason for being, right? And that is for me or for us the biggest value.
Yeah.
Just for our audience to have in their mind, can you just describe the different types of APIs that you have?
Sure. We have really different kind of APIs. We have this, as mentioned before, the EPG data, which they can aggregate with other APIs together, like EPG and the Meteo. Then we have the video API, which our customer can find out on metadata what kind of video are playing on our players on the website. Then we have a really nice audio API with podcast also on it, radio and all this stuff, which is played over our player on the website and on the apps. Then we have MX3, that's a Swiss music platform with only Swiss music. Now we are working on different kind of new version of API, like SRG, because we have more maturity, and then we evolve to create more and more new APIs. We launched last year Play Swiss. That's a streaming platform. And also there are the ideas to create an API, but something really is very interesting and really I'm looking forward to have this API is access services. Over the API, you receive subtitle, audio description, and all these kind of services. And that will be a really cool API, which we are publishing, I hope so, by the end of April.
So you're facilitating new distribution channels of your media, as well as improving the experience for the end consumers as well.
Right, and that really was a good point, Mark, because this year, so we worked a lot on our distribution strategy, and the classical distribution is satellite, UKW, DAB, radio, and audio over this kind of not old school, but this kind of technology. But this year is new on the strategy that API is our new it's a new distribution channel written in our strategy. And that's really it's a huge maturity step forward.
That's a big deal.
That's very cool.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah, there's several things that we talked about that we should touch upon. How to react to the Corona crisis. And we had several conversations through the last year. So can you tell maybe a little bit more about how was your operation affected by Corona, and what did it do to the API program? Did it slow things down? Did it speed things up? What was the effect that you've seen?
Yeah, there was. We had this conversation, and I was like, "Wow, we had a huge amount more calls on our APIs." That's in the fact that the people that work from home and has more time to test, to go to the documentation and try on the API to find more ideas and implement the API in their own platform. And we saw that in the last year we have the 25% more API calls on our platform. And I would say that's really cool stuff.
So did it also accelerate management buy-in?
Yeah, absolutely. Because we could show them that we have these 25% more calls on that, and they accelerate the digital transformation, because for 1 or 2 years, as an example, the electronic program guide, we send them manually we download the EPG data on an FTP server, and then they take from the FTP server and implement that in their own application. But now they have this API machine to machine connected, and they have on real time, they have the data in their platform. So that was a really nice story to present them to our management, and they say, okay, that brings really value, not only value, but accelerate the transformation. And as you talk at just the begin, the resilience from such a company to have this more automation on the workflows.
It must also have created quite some cost savings, I would imagine, like if people don't have to do this anymore. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I had a storyboard set up for my manager, and that was really that kind of story that I present him. Then, hey, look, before you have so much manual stuff to do, to download, to bring there, and stuff like that, and the people, they don't have time for other ideas. So and now they save more than the 50% on time to integrate not just one customer, but a lot customer. That is really, that brings value.
There's a lot of strength and resilience that comes through digital transformation and creating linkages outside of your organization to other organizations through your API program. And by creating these connections, your organization ends up becoming stronger and creating more value because you've got people participating in value creation with you. And I'm wondering, from the perspective of a publicly funded organization, how that might change your perspective in what you're looking for in terms of partners who consume your APIs.
From our government, we have a mission. They say, hey, you as a public broadcaster, you need to open your data, like archive as an example. Public broadcaster, they have amount of archive data that brings so much value. And we need to open that kind of data, but in a manner that we know how the people are consuming, where they implement it, and we want some control on that, because sometimes you don't have the rights to distribute content to others, but you need to open up your archive. And for us, or for me, that is really one of the core or elementary, because I stand up in the morning and work on the API to open up our archive, to spread this kind of information for everyone.
Are you already seeing that the organization has become more adaptive because of APIs?
Yes, because if you're connecting with other, like universities or with archives institutions, then they come and they tell you, hey, we want really use your content, and they want to integrate then in their application or in universities. So then you need to be really be careful how to create the APIs, but also how it's the operation behind you. And then you need to really be sure that your backends are working, your APIs are working, and you are still in contact with the people to adopt the API, to bring new functionalities. And so that makes you as a company more resilient, with these partnerships that you are going to have. And the ecosystem, it's growing up. So as much more you're growing up and you have this interaction, you feel you bring as much more value to other companies. That makes us, not just me, but us very proud, let me say.
Yeah. How does this work in like the European landscape? Because we were talking a little bit before that you're in touch with a lot of your colleagues from around Europe and probably also from outside of Europe. How are APIs changing the public broadcasting sector? Do you have a clear idea about that, or an opinion or a vision?
Sure. I have an opinion. The European Broadcaster Union, the ABU, it's really, they have more than 70 broadcasters in it. But I think we as SRG, we was one of the first to move on this direction to API. And I talked with the ABU. Those guys have also a lot of APIs, but the most of them, they have technical API. So for
integration purposes,
integration purposes, and not the mindset as a API as a product. So that makes the big difference. What we are doing, or what is our mindset on that, and but they have a bunch of other broadcasters. They are now on in that way, and that will be next week. We will meet these people from the ABU to find out how we want to sketch the next steps on this project that we are facing in maybe in the next few months. But the SRG has, I would say, with RD together and BBC for sure, they had also an API program. They was one of the first to go in this direction.
Yeah. What do you think is like the big promise of APIs for public broadcasting? Like, what are the things that you're most excited about?
Yeah, I mean, the most excited at the moment is that the API became like a distribution channel. And that is one thing. And what makes me also exciting is that the API became more and more really product, not just an interface. That's really cool also. And we have now developers or DevOps teams which are responsible for a website, or they're responsible for an app. And now additionally, they're responsible also from the API as a product. And that's really a huge maturity step, which is, I think, very important for the future.
In our previous episodes, one of the core topics we kept asking our guests about was something that I've called the interface economy, or the interface opportunity, which is about we are creating these API products that are making it easier for developers to create new connections. But also, like, how can we take it a step further, and how can we open up these information highways to regular people? Regular people being non-developers. Yes, right? Yes. Like, not that. Oh God, I'm stepping into an ant nest. But you know what I mean. So how can we give them the possibility to also use things? And we used to have things like widgets and like embeddable things that you could like put on your website. I think, I'm not sure, but I'd love to hear your ideas about this. I think that what's going to happen is that now that we have this information highway with the APIs, that is like a standardized way of communicating this information, that will rewrite those interfaces on top of this information network. So that's like you can go to an interface catalog and say, okay, I'm looking for Swiss weather. And I can get the API, but there's also a widget. There's a microsite that's like acting like a little app. And like there's a couple of different things. Maybe there's a widget that tells you when it's raining or how much snow there is or stuff like that, where you bring these different incarnations of the same information together in sort of capability umbrella, where you can say like, okay, as a Swiss broadcaster, we have this capability around weather. And these are all the different formats that you can find it in. Here's the raw information in API formats, but then here's already some derivatives. Maybe there's even some third-party things in there. Is this something that you're seeing happening, or you think this is Christoph's pipe dream?
No, I think for the non-developers, and I would say I'm not a developer, so but it could be useful to have such API widgets or API already software package or something like that to just to integrate in a browser, like the add-ons on the Chrome based, and you can put this on your website, or you can put this on your front side on the search site. But I think at the moment where we are as an API program, we need to go. That's could be the future, maybe in 5 years, something like that. But we are still struggling how we can onboard developers or junior developers to use the API as easy as possible.
Yeah, simplifying the developer experience. Yeah. SDKs could be one incarnation like that simplifies it, like libraries for specific programming languages. That could be one of those interfaces.
Yeah, but in SDK, also there you need to be a developer. to integrate the SDK, on your website. Or I think for normal people like me and non-developers, it should be something like a bookmark. You go there and say, okay, I want this API and I want to put them here, or like a widget. I think the market for widget doesn't evolve that much. From my point of view, I think that could be more innovation on this market.
Forecasted centimeters of snow in the next 2 weeks as a widget provided by you, and then I'm sure a lot of people with small websites, people that don't have the money to pay for developers, would be able to use that. Just plug it into their website. Yeah.
So I'm a huge fan of public media, and I find that there are lots of people like me that have a much stronger affinity and a connection with public media than they do commercial media. I'm wondering if by exposing your APIs, if any of these deeply caring fans that are not a commercial interest or some sort of organization, but have you seen anybody doing something interesting just because they have the capability and you're exposing these APIs and they're doing something interesting as an individual or a small community group that has surprised you, or that they have chosen to participate with you because that you're exposing these APIs and making it possible for them?
Yeah, also, I mean, we had different kind of user or customer. They are really trusting us as a public broadcaster, and especially on the meteo data. They can have the meteo data a lot from everywhere, from Google, from AccuWeather, from there, and then, but they decide to have the data from us because they have some trust on the public broadcaster. And that makes me, that's really for us, it's so much value in that when somebody tells you, hey, we want your API, your data, because we trust you. That's really cool. And we have other cases for just as father, he becomes father, and he has these daughters, and during the corona, he has some program for his children, but they want to have an app just for children. So he contacted me and they told me, hey, I have this idea. Can you help me to find out how I can create an app or a website to collect all these kind of videos and audios for my children? Because the children, they are 9 and 10, and he don't want that the children are going to YouTube and find something which is not for the kids. So he create this app for children, and that's really okay. That's also a nice story on that. So yeah, we have a lot of registered developers on our website, on our developer portal, but until today we didn't activate the community too much, because if you starting to activate a community, you need to have a plan behind that. So we didn't do that. So coming back to before, we had this kind of exchange with community, with customer, and really nice story on that, but not in scale.
That's a really interesting story, and you're absolutely right about the requirements around building and engaging with your community. So that's good foresight on your part. But I love the idea of a dad creating an app for kids. That's awesome.
The tricky thing there always is, how do you make it sustainable? Sometimes I see organizations embracing the citizen development as like the source of innovation, but then they stop further investing in it. And I think the tricky thing is always like, how can you make sure that, like, when somebody does that effort to create that, how can you make it sustainable? Is there some ways that you can make it, expose it and help them promote it, so that they become so successful that from now on this can actually remain something. Because I see often this the shadow side of the hackathons. It's like it's really, really cool for proof of concepts, but then your expectation should not be that that is like a final product and that it's going to be around, because those people that came and do this work on their weekends and their evenings, they've got a daytime job, and they're not going to keep on maintaining it necessarily. There might be some that do it, but it's not always the case. I think so. I think the challenge is twofold. It's like when you start engaging with people like that, can you also provide a path to future success where you can actually support them in going out there and becoming more and more successful? It's kind of like making your channel partners successful. It's very similar to what I've seen people doing with SDKs. The eternal question with SDKs is, should you build them yourself, or should you just let the community do it? Because there's always going to be somebody who puts something on GitHub. You can take the community route, but you need to be very careful, because if you take the community route, you won't have control, which means that if they lose interest, it might be that just gets disrepaired, or it's like a really old version of your API. And now you have people building new apps against an old version of your API. I think the most successful teams that I've seen doing things is then taking a stake in the ownership and like helping with promotion, and maybe even hiring to some extent the developer that reached a certain success with their work on top of your work, so that this becomes something that will remain and not just evaporate again. I don't know if that resonates with you, Roberto.
That's what exactly my point, Christoph. On the hackathons, you have a bunch of ideas and really nice work from those guys. They worked sometime during the night, and then they present this, and you say, wow, that's a really cool idea. And then from this 20 idea, you're starting then, because you can't support these 20 ideas. I mean, they are good ideas and bad ideas, and good implementation, bad implementation. So then, and we as a company, we learned a lot. I mean, we have a department, or we have an innovation management, innovation process, but you need maturity. You need to learn how to implement such an innovation process. But what we are doing this year, and after these 4 or 5 hack days which we had, we want to really step on this kind of sustainability and support good ideas to integrate them in our company, and then make it compatible with our products, or then really to separate them, but to help them to develop his product with our data. But it's something that we learned from the past, which we didn't do very well. And we hope that this year we find the 1 to 5 ideas which we can integrate in our innovation process, and we have a budget. So cool. We have this funnel, we have a budget, and then we can support to develop this idea from a POC to an MVP, and then really to a product.
Very cool.
That is the idea behind this year, the hackathon. We hope that we can do this, but it's not so easy, because you know that you have a company that is such a public broadcaster. Not all of the people has the mindset of innovation.
Yeah.
And these are two kind of cultures that they come then together, and then you need to find the right balance to how to integrate, or how to make it separately in a separately stream to help them out to create the product.
That's interesting, because I had not thought yet of hackathons as a potential interface discovery tool. But you're right, like potentially asking the community, so what kind of derivatives can you make from our APIs to make the reach of your data bigger? Like, how can we reach more people with the same information? And then which ones of these can actually become part of our platform and can become maybe new patterns that we can also implement with other APIs? That's a cool idea. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just have to mention it because I saw on your LinkedIn profile you had something about technology is the fun part and culture is the challenge.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
It's yeah, it's true.
Yeah, it's really like this. I mean, you can implement really nice, super cool or API or technology, but we are all struggling all the time with the different kind of culture, and especially in our company, Mark, is we have the broadcaster and we have the broadbander. The broadband is really online facing and with agile, with Scrum, and all these DevOps and all with these nice buzzwords. But hey, but we have also the broadcast, which they make an amazing job. We can't or have in mind that everybody is thinking like a Scrum Master or working in agile in an agile organization. So that's really something that we need to balance all the time. That's why it becomes the culture. It is really sometimes funny.
That makes sense. Yeah.
I see this everywhere. Like technology is just a start. Technology is
Right.
just a tool. And then you have to actually start doing the work.
Yeah.
It's also the same with dev portals. As long as there is no content, you might have a dev portal, but that's it.
Yeah, and you have to open up also your portal.
Yeah.
I saw that you have you have not a lot of portal, but you have you have some developer portals, but they are closed. So then you need, before you can enter, you need to register, and this is a huge hurdle. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
To consume or to investigate on the data that you are exposing. So you need to be also open with your data.
You've been doing this for a while now, and I'm sure that you've learned an awful lot. I'm curious what advice you would give in your learning process. There's typically some successes and failures and a change of perspective that you gain as you move along. For someone who is starting out their API program, digital transformation journey, what advice would you give them based on what you've learned?
They give me the API topic because I think they know, okay, Roberto will do this without the mandate. He will do that. Because he's not going to all the process like here you need to go on that board, you need to go on this board, you need to make a presentation on the top management. At that time, if I go do this process, for the hack day, we didn't have a dev portal, we didn't have an API gateway. So then I decide to really make some ninja stuff and go really do that by my own. Clear, I had a budget for that and I have a go from my manager, but I didn't have all the process. But my advice will be, if I restarted again, then really I would write a mandate by myself and write down what is my goal and my expectation for that, and to sign off with on top management, because API is not a technical interfaces anymore. It's a product, and we have customer which are using API, and sometimes they pay also money to use the API. That's the big difference. That I would change. I would really go a step back, to write down the mandate and go to the top management and let them to do the buy-in from them, because they need to invest money on this program. That's one thing what I learned. And the other thing is it's not only a one-man show API anymore, because as more API you are exposing, as more questions, as more application, website, and so on they are creating. So you need really a team behind you. You can start, I would say, 1 or 2 or 3 people, 1 PO and 2 API engineers, or with 1 engineer, but with the good partnerships with your partners, and to create such a program. That is something. But the other advice is, do not be really in process. Just do it. Just go for it. Learn, communicate with your developers. Be open for criticism, because you're learning. You adapt. Because I saw that the people, they are consuming the data, or they are going to the developer portal, they are really cool. They give you good advice or feedback. I mean, that's great. So for free, in that case. And then your maturity and your learning they bring so value. And then that's maybe these 2 things.
Because it's always hard, especially with APIs, it's hard to explain what this whole weird thing is. Like today it's much easier. It's everywhere. Everybody's talking about APIs.
Yeah.
But I think even 5 years ago it was much, much harder.
Oh, yes.
I've heard this story about people in an organization waking up and realizing, actually, this is something that we should be doing, and then going a little bit of guerrilla style, like you just described, just to do some initial validation and proof, and then going back and going for a bigger budget. Because what I've heard as an advice is that when you go to really senior management, they don't care about 50K or 100K. They want, it needs to be a considerable budget. If you're not talking about a couple of millions over a couple of years, then what are you wasting my time? And is that also your perception in the public sector, or is this different?
No, it's also you need to do. I mean, it's a developer portal or a gateway is not for free, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it's not 10,000 francs or euro.
Yeah.
So then you have manpower on that also. So you can do that for the hack days. You don't need to go to the top management if it's only for the hack day. But if you have a strategy behind that you really want to scale and the API, and this at the beginning, then I would say start small,
Mm-hmm.
because you can scale. That's a nice thing on the API. You can scale, right? Because you have the cool technology for scaling. But you can show them, you start small, and as much more you bring value to the company with the API, and not for commercialization, but value in different kind of value topic, then you need more money for that.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's very important to be transparent to that, because if you are not doing this from beginning, after 2 years, you need to, and you come and a point that you need to go to the top management, because it's not anymore these 10 or 20,000 francs or euro that you want to invest in this kind of technology.
We often get introduced into customers, or we get to know customers, and they've made the decision about API management, and they figured all of this out, and then after a while they realize but we still need a developer portal, and then that often happens.
Yeah, right. And you know better than me, Christoph, that a developer portal is not just a website. I mean, today the developer portal is much more than a website. It's not static. I would say start small and scale then at a time.
Christoph, I think from my perspective, the budget's a proxy for what the CEO is really asking, which is tell me why our scope of effort should include this. There are so many demands and so many different directions that things can go. I think people need to be prepared to tell why the API program is worthy of the company's investment. It's often less about money and more about the attention and the focus that the company needs to bring.
We've talked for a little while, and I think but I wanted to ask you about what's your future vision? Like how are APIs going to change the API, the media landscape? Like we have been, and I'm fishing for something very specific, because we have been talking about information bubbles and misinformation and the threat that is actually for society. It piqued my interest when you started talking that this might actually be a way to help break through information bubbles and that APIs could play a role in doing something like that. Have you thought a little bit further about this already? Do you have already ideas how you imagine this to happen?
I mean, it's about information bubbles. Also, I think it's a trust thing, right? So let me say safety.
Yeah.
As a public broadcaster, our mission is really to be differentiate in our information politics.
Yes.
Yeah, and we can't be just on really left or really right. We need to be really open on that. So I would say for a company or for a private person, they want to create an application or a website, and if they are using our API, then he has, I would say, not a guarantee that the information are not correct, but much more safety with our APIs.
Yeah.
But it's nothing to do with the bubbles, because you always have just the public broadcast as SRG as an information deliverer.
Well, I think this transcends politics actually, because it feels like information is going through a phase transition. There's so much more now that suddenly it's a very different beast. Information used to be a scarce thing, and now it's so abundant that actually it's attention that is becoming the scarce thing. It's interesting to think about, like, what is the role of public broadcasts in this transition, in this changing world? Probably there's actually a really important role that public broadcast companies could play because of what you said earlier about the trust factor. But it feels like, because it is changing so fast, we need a more adaptive organization that makes it easier to create more nimble experiments, so that we can see, like, okay, how can we be meaningful for the public interest, and how can we help address these information shocks that are going through society? Like I've got a private theory that like this change of the scarceness of information, it's changing the social fabric. Even we see how social media, how it is changing families, and I think traditionally public broadcast has played like a role as a cohesive factor. I wonder, how can public broadcast be that anchor for society that holds together a national identity, and that keeps people talking with each other, so that we don't just fraction apart and become like a society of strangers. I think that is a mission that transcends political leanings. I think this is something that we all strive for, because the moment that we stop talking with our neighbors, it's very bad for society. Like if we become strangers for each other, it's so much easier to have a breakdown in society. So it's interesting to think about how giving these new technologies and API technologies to public broadcast companies, how can that help with addressing these changes in society?
I mean, they have some. I mean, that's a huge problem to solve.
Yes.
And as a public broadcaster, we can't do this by our own. Mm-hmm. We need really, maybe the ABU has that they started already thinking about how to go with such a kind of problem. It's a social, a political. And they start, I think, something like a news pilot, which they integrate different kind of public broadcaster news in a platform. Yeah. So you have then this diversity of kind of information that you want to.
That's interesting.
And they gives you the ability to, maybe also to not to have this bubble just from one public broadcast, but really from European wide or worldwide. Again, from worldwide. That's
sort of like reshaping the information expectation that messages need to be repeated through multiple channels to be trustworthy, so that we don't get caught up in single channel, whatever that single channel is. Yeah.
Or
Interesting.
also public broadcaster, I think what is also important for us is to give them the ability to consume this information, but in the same time to say, hey, that's just our opinion. They have much more other opinions.
Yeah.
Take care of other opinion, inform you what others are saying on that. I think that's something that also that it could be a role of the public broadcaster to identify this kind of diversity and talk to the customer.
Yeah, very interesting.
For that, Christoph, I saw or I read a lot of use cases with artificial intelligence. Which what I really like was a guy who was talking with the information bubbles, and he told them, hey, you just take X as your information and then put the AI on that, and then it's fine. I mean, then the AI find out if this information of the correctness of the diversity and all this stuff. That was really interesting. So coming back to the API, I mean, what it also could be interesting that on your platform, you could to start to integrate also artificial intelligence logic on your platform, and for this kind of use cases.
I think the tricky thing there is who owns the AI, and what kind of biases is it built with.
Yeah.
Well, interesting times for sure.
Yeah, this has been really fascinating. I think we're kind of coming to time now, and Roberto, I just really am excited to have talked with you today and to make your acquaintance. I'm a huge fan of public broadcasting, and thank you so much for sharing your insights and experience with us.
Yeah, thank you, Mark and Chris. I hope that was valuable for you guys, and as far as it was cool. Yeah,
I think it's a very it's a different perspective than what you normally hear, mostly in the API community. So I'm sure that there'll be quite some people that are interested in this. I'm sure. Yeah.
Okay,
Roberto, if people want to go check out SRG SSR and what you're doing with your APIs, or find out more, where would you send them to?
I mean, they can go to the developer, our developer site.
Yeah, the dev portal for SSR SRG. And we'll share that in the show notes, right, Mike?
Yeah, we will. Yeah. Roberto, it was super awesome to meet you and have this conversation. Thank you for joining us today.
Cool. Thank you, Mark. And Christoph, it was really, really nice experience.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
It's our hope that you were encouraged by today's story and picked up some insights that will help you navigate your digital transformation and make your API program more successful. If you have questions or feedback on the podcast, we invite you to email us at info@prenovix.com. Thanks for listening.